Fox News host Tucker Carlson opened his primetime program on Wednesday night, taking a direct jab at GOP presidential candidate Nikki Haley. Let's watch.
She may be running to be the Republican nominee, but she is fundamentally indistinguishable from the neoliberal donor base of the Democratic Party. Nikki Haley believes in collective racial guilt. She thinks Ukraine's borders are more important than our own, far more important. She believes identity politics is our future. Vote for me because I'm a woman, she says. That's her pitch.
In his monologue, Carlson highlighted CNN host Don Lemon's now infamous not in her prime insult of Nikki Haley, but he seemed to back Lemon on this, saying, quote, "But to be fair to Don Lemon, Nikki Haley seemed like perfectly fair game. She's a Republican presidential candidate, so savage her for all you want. Oh, but no, because in fact, in all the ways that matter, Nikki Haley is a member in good standing of the most protected class of all, upper income, liberal white ladies with fashionable political views." Tucker Carlson is not the only conservative media personality to jump to Lemon's defense. As we pointed out in yesterday's show, Candace Owens did as well. So, this is an example of, I think, what I was telling you, that she is actually not super popular with where the conservative movement is now, which includes people like Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson, who do have at least some fingers on the pulse of what a lot of Republican primary voters want, what conservatives believe in. She's past her prime, not in terms of her age or anything of that nature, but in terms of her views, which are in line with the Bush-era aughts version of the Republican Party, a version of the Republican Party that is not part of the Republican Party anymore, and is to some degree, and I take Tucker's point on this, he's correct, is to some degree part of the more closely associated with the Democratic Party in terms of foreign policy, in particular. So she's running to be president for the wrong party, because her main views are neoconservative views. That's her distinguishing factor.
So I'm really interested in this realignment that's happening with identity politics in the Republican Party right now.
I don't know about the collective racial guilt thing. I don't know what he means by that, but
yeah, many Democrats have been rightly criticized for saying that some version of Nikki Haley isn't really a woman of color. Nikki Haley is ashamed of her identity, and that's why she goes by Nikki, even though it's her name, name that she's gone by for many years. Members of the Women of the View have said this kind of thing, and I think that they've been rightly criticized for it by conservatives, who then kind of are appropriating a version of identity politics that the liberals have been doing for a long time, which says that we're proud of the diversity of our party. It's good for the optics of the Republicans as a kind of a white male party with white male interest to have diversity. There was a lot of celebration at the RNC back in 2020 about how it was very diverse, and frankly, I think more diverse than the DNC was, the convention before the general election. And so you have one part of the party that is clearly invested in the idea of using identity to shield substantive criticisms of the Republican Party's racial politics, the same way the Democratic Party has used identity politics to shield its own racial politics. And another part of the party that, because it's coming in the vessel of Nikki Haley, whose substantive politics are antagonistic to the more kind of populist part of the Republican Party, as you've mentioned, are now getting pushback for having exploited identity politics. So in one party, you're having people who are on both sides of this equation. And it's fascinating to watch, because I have seen even Candace Owens make identity politics arguments where she's been accused of, let's say, anti-Semitism because of her association with and defense of Kanye West. She'll turn and say, "Oh, but I'm associated with PragerU. I work for PragerU, and all my best friends are Jewish," right? And the lack of consistency here, to me, is a kind of a vulnerability. It's a kind of a weakness. And I think that leaning too hard on identity hurts Democrats when they are unable to back it up with substantive benefits for the communities in question and substantive politics outside of an identity lens. And seeing Republicans, including Nikki Haley, fumble the bag with this particular line of attack it's really interesting to watch.
Yeah, but again, I think it's primarily about her views, and her views just not being a solid fit.
Yeah, but Tucker Carlson isn't just focusing on her views. People are mad about this.
He brought out Ukraine.
Yeah, but they also talk about this high heel stuff. She keeps bringing up the high heels in her speeches.
I mean, who cares?
They're mad at her. He says that she basically has an identity of interest with rich white women. Like, he didn't have to say that. Like, there's a clear part of this that they're irritated with, her branding as...
But there I think he's impugning the views of a certain kind of liberal white woman. who used to be
But
part
what
of
does that have to do with Nikki Haley, who's neither liberal nor white?
It's like a Trump resistance kind of thing. That is, again, so hawkish on foreign policy and only really welcome in the Democratic Party, not welcome among Republican primary voters.
Yeah, I completely understand and agree with the substantive political criticism of Nikki Haley, but it is very clear that the Republicans are also trying to decide how they feel about some of these identity issues. And it wouldn't surprise me that, a year or a year and change from now, when the Republican candidate is secured, and we're talking about VP choices, there's suddenly a very robust conversation about how good people like Nikki Haley are for the VP ticket because of the same identity issues that some people in the Republican Party are criticizing right now.
I don't think so, because it's going to be Tim Scott.
It's still going to be those issues.
That's why I'm joking about it.
But that's the point.
Yeah.
Is it going to be another white guy paired up against the likely white male Republican candidate, or do Republican voters also feel that broader social pressure, even if it's only in a defensive way, to get someone else on the ticket to make them look, for lack of a better word, like they are woke too?
I don't know if that's the same thing, but I mean, sure. Yes. Do Republicans cynically engage in some level of identity politicking? I guess. I mean, they do it to such a lesser degree, though, than the Democrats. It doesn't seem worth getting all upset about, but
I'm not all upset. I'm just pointing out that they're clearly struggling with how to work through this because there's some obvious hypocrisy here. And we'll see. I'm very, very, very interested to see how this plays out once the VP choices start to come down the pike. I wish I had some of the reporting now that was coming out around the Republican National Convention in 2020, because it was genuinely, sincerely diverse, and there was a lot of criticism of the DNC not being as diverse and also excluding particular people, like AOC was added to the panel very last.
In terms of who's speaking?
In terms of who was speaking. And the people who spoke were also, they directly referenced their racial identity or gender identity as a, look at us, we're diverse too, sort of a way. It was
Eva
very
Longoria
explicit.
was the host, though. How much diversity
Oh,
there.
the DNC one?
Right.
No, I'm saying the RNC, the RNC members were like, look how diverse we are. In a way that I think was one, responsive to the George Floyd protests, which were ongoing at the time. And two, it's obviously defensive. I'm not saying that they invented this strategy, but they are playing into it. They're, the idea that they're like anti-woke and proudly who they are and never feeling any of these pressures and defiantly doing it how they want to do it is belied by the clear programming choices that they've made, and potentially, and we'll see, the kind of VP choices that the eventual Republican nominee ends up making.
All right, well, that's it for us this week. Have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you back here on Monday.
Be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss any special weekend content. And for those of you who prefer to listen while on the go, we are now available anywhere you listen to podcasts.
See you later.
Bye-bye.